podcasting from Portland East to Portland West, from Big Pine Key to Pacific Beach, and from San Juan to Guam. This is All Across America. Bridgette, Jason of AgMafia, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Well, can you guys introduce yourselves and what you do with AgMafia?
I think Jason needs to go first. This is kind of his brainchild.
Let's hear it.
Okay. So I used to work in a different life doing other things in the field of agriculture. And we had a Snapchat group and I was told I couldn't do it. You know, and when someone doesn't like what you're doing, they want to own it or to have control of it. So I had to give that up. And I said, well, if I ever did this again, I'd just name it AgMafia. And it was kind of in spite, you know, kind of a thing. And that name just kind of stuck. And so we've got our group, Bridgette and myself and our other partner, Kyle. We're the AgMafia. And then we host a Snapchat group that's got a fairly big following across the United States where it's kind of a handoff. So maybe one week I have it, Mark, and then we'd hand it off to you. And we get to see what you do for the week. And then the next week it goes to Bridgette. And so people follow it. It's generally agriculture related, I guess. So yeah, that's AgMafia.
All right. Where are you based, Jason?
I'm in Northeast North Dakota. Most people, if they hear of that area, it's Devil's Lake, a big waterfall, great walleye fishing part of North Dakota. And so I'm kind of in the northeast quadrant of the state.
So near, not too far from Grand Forks?
Yes, I'm about 90 miles west or east, west of there. And I'm about 60 miles from the Canadian border. So kind of tucked up in that part of the state.
All right. How about you, Bridgette?
So I am, for using Grand Forks as our reference point, I'm about an hour to the southwest of Grand Forks. And I'm on the edge of the Red River Valley of North Dakota. When it comes to AgMafia, all of us were leaving our corporate lives at roughly the same time. And so this became our company together. Besides what we do with the Snapchat account, additionally, we host Agronomy on Ice, which is literally a farm show on frozen Devil's Lake, North Dakota, every February. Okay. And we get called to be speakers quite a lot. In fact, I've been filling Jason's calendar today with all the things that we're going to be doing.
I can verify that, yes.
Jason and Kyle are in the field every day. They are independent crop consultants working directly with farmers. So if you think about it, they're like the doctors making a house call to a field and diagnosing the patient, which is that farmer's field, and giving them recommendations on what they can do to, increase bushels, overall crop health, all that type of thing. On the flip side, I'm not in the field every day as one of the partners. I actually host a daily radio show on agriculture, and then I do a variety of other things through social media, training and coaching for people, etc.
Excellent. Well, let me ask you this. I'm from New York. We've had people from the actual mafia in the life, and, they all have nicknames. Vinny Gorgeous, Junior Lollipops. Do you guys have nicknames? Do you have nicknames for some of your clients, your farmers?
When we do sponsorships for our Agronomy on Ice, we will have, nicknames for those people at the different levels. So we'll have, I can't remember any off the top of my head.
Oh, like our accomplices, our back alley, guys, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But no Tony No-Till, Pesticide Clyde. I'm just coming out.
Well, now we will.
Give me names and a list, and I can surely help you out in that category.
Writing those down.
Well, Jason, maybe you could just walk us through a day. I know you're traveling all over, at least the state of North Dakota, if not into Canada. What's your typical day look like, week look like? And I know it depends on the time of year.
So here we're into our harvest season. We're just starting it right now. We have some barley that's off. We'll have quite a bit of it probably next week, which will be, starting the 9th, 10th of August. People will get into that. I was out today. We were looking at edible beans. So if you're going to any restaurants and there's pinto beans or black beans, generally those are sourced out of North Dakota. We're just checking to see the pod set, how much flowering we've got going on. our row closure, we're checking for disease. I was just got back here like 15 minutes ago before we started recording. I was in a field checking for a specific weed, water hemp, that has infested one of my growers' fields, and how we're going to manage that. And then the rest of the day, I got a couple fields off of barley. I have 2 pickup trucks that have holes cut in the floor, and there's a hydraulic probe on the inside, and I will take my trucks out and run them just through. Okay, is my probe working? Is my air conditioning working? Is everything? Because I'll spend the next 5 months in that truck soil sampling, getting soil fertility information for next year's crop.
Sometimes those
And
2 things don't work together, the soil probe and the air conditioning on the same day at the same
yeah,
time.
I could fair enough. And North Dakota and beyond?
I strictly work in a very small area north of Devil's Lake. I'm very
Wow.
blessed to just do my business. My individual business is called Rock and Roll Agronomy.
Wow.
And I have 13 farmer clients that I contract with, and I pay attention to their crops from before we plant all the way through this fall, where I'll start sampling for the 2027 crop year. And then,
Wow.
yeah, like Bridgette said, we will go and we put on a conference, and then I don't know, Bridget's dragging me all over the state this year. I don't know what she's
All
about.
right.
She knows
Well,
most people. She's the mafia. She's so well connected.
I like it. Yeah, I know the western part of the state a little better. I was in Medora last year in Mandan. We had Chuck Suchi, the North Dakota State Troubadour,
Oh,
on the
yeah.
show. So I was visiting his farm, and he's a wheat farmer himself. And during that trip, we were out in Alliance, Nebraska, at a bean and grain elevator operator, mostly pinto beans. And they did say that North Dakota leads the pack in pinto beans. So it's interesting to hear it from the horse's mouth. And it's almost like you're seasoning firewood at this point. It's like you stack your firewood in March and April for the following winter, and it's almost like here's harvest season. You're already preparing for next year.
Yeah, so I still have things to look and check at. I'll still walk soybeans for soybean aphids. I'll still walk edible beans. I have to check for rust primarily, and then I'll see how pollination has gone in corn. So there's still some of the actual field stuff I have to do. I have to see where we're at on harvest on wheat, and then we'll start soil sampling. And that'll take us quite a while to get that done. My goal is to be done by December 1st or when the snow comes, whichever
Yeah,
comes first. So it's just not fun to sample in snow. It's so
I can imagine.
yeah.
And speaking of winter, I was going to say, what do you do during winter? But I know agronomy on ice is one of them.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions I think of the state of North Dakota is it's barren, it's cold, it's just this, you wouldn't want to ever live there. But it's like, you know what? We go to places on the East Coast or the Southeast and the South, and we just melt. We're not used to humidity. We can't handle that stuff.
Tell me about it.
Well,
I can't go south of I-90 this time of year or I'm done.
That's pretty far north.
yeah. So you do winter stuff, and we do a lot of ice fishing. There's a lot of snowmobiling, recreation like that. I prefer to fish. I like the hard water season. My schedule doesn't permit me to do hardly any wet water fishing. I got to do hard water fishing, and I like it. So that's what I do.
All right. And when is the event on ice?
Agronomy on Ice is always the first Wednesday in February.
Guaranteed to be cold.
It is, yes. So that is, and surprisingly, if you have a very nice day, we have found that our attendance is lower because people are hauling grain or working cattle or doing stuff. And then if it's like a nice day would be like 30 degrees, 32, that'd be like beautiful, 25 even. But if it's 25 below or 30 below, then it's also lower because it's like maybe too cold. But that, 0 to 25 or even 10 below, you're kind of mostly in an ice house or walking around with a drink and socializing anyway, and you're bundled up for the weather. So it's no big deal.
And it's a dry 20 below.
Right. And realistically, you're not standing outside because when you go to a trade show, you walk from booth to booth in a building. Here, you're outside, but your booth is a fish house. So people walk from house to house and they visit, and there's always food, and there might even be some holes drilled if you wanted to fish. And we
Very
talk a lot
nice.
about farming.
Excellent. Any hot toddies or my favorite drink in the wintertime is well, you could do bourbon, but a little rum and apple cider with some cloves. Very nice.
Oh,
Cloves and cinnamon sticks.
There are specific companies that when they set up their booth, they have their favorite drink and people know to go get them from that particular seed company who makes something called an orange dreamsicle, and from another crop input company who has something with a variance of peach crown involved in it. And there's another company that just rolls in a keg because they make beer. So there's
Because that's how they roll.
totally.
Come on, that's a bad joke. Too easy.
And remember, we raise barley in this state. North Dakota is number one
Right?
in 11 different crops, and no barley, no beer. So as our growers
Wow.
produce barley, and Jason's in an area that historically has high barley acres,
Right.
this is a fit for us.
Yeah, sure is. So I'm not going to quiz you and ask you to name all 11 of those crops, but that's something I didn't know, and I bet a lot of our listeners didn't either. So what are the other top crops that come to mind from the state of North Dakota?
okay. Well, let's see here. Hard red spring wheat is number one. So everybody says, there's wheat, but then you have classifications. You have hard red winter, so Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, down in there, and into Colorado, and then you'll have soft winters, Ohio, Indiana out there. You'll have white wheats out in the PNW. The PNW raises just about anything. They're just so unique out there. But we are predominantly hard red spring wheat is for sure. Durum wheat, so pasta is that's pretty much all that makes. Barley is in there. Of course, edible beans, for sure canola. Hands down, we're probably 90% of all the canola acres in the United States, but
Wow.
we're small compared to Canada, right? So we have to remind people that North Dakota is not a province of Canada, even though it might look like it, or we sound like it, of course.
Right.
Many classifications, sunflower. Well, sunflowers, that kind of goes back between us and South Dakota.
Yeah.
But you've got many classes of pinto beans, and not as a crop, but as a commodity, is honey.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're also a fairly large, I think you mentioned corn. We have high acreage of soybeans. We also raise a lot of flax here in the
Yep.
state,
Yep.
Wow.
sugar beets, potatoes, and then there's some minor things like peas, lentils, alfalfa. I have a grower not far from me who raises mint for toothpaste. So
Okay.
it's really
Wow.
diverse here.
Wow. And we mentioned Canada. How is agronomy, how is farming, how is growing approached differently, or maybe not so much across the border?
I wouldn't say it's very different at all. They do it is different. I mean, they're just the way their system is set up is from probably a government standpoint. There's some differences. But when you sit down, we have Bridget and I have many friends in Canada that we communicate with daily, whether it's Snapchat or something else, other social media, and we just share ideas. I got a guy up there who's my oats contact. I mean, he just knows that crop. So everybody's got to have a guy, right? I know what I don't care what tough subject it is. You got to have somebody that's like that. So yeah, it feels different once you go up there. I mean, you can definitely tell you're not in the United States. They could use better roads up there. I'll just say that.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Good to hear
They won't
that.
deny that. They won't deny that.
But the equipment is similar, the soil types are similar. They're also prairies, much like we are here in North Dakota and eastern Montana. So, yeah, we see a lot of similarities to our Canadian counterparts.
Same crops for the most
Mhm.
part. They might have bigger acres of canola and less corn and soybeans. So that's what I get called on, are those crops, because to them they're kind of minor crops.
And do they use the term acres?
They're
When
how would you say it? They're very good at doing math. Like they can convert acres and hectares and liters and and we don't. We can't.
All right.
no, no, this is the ag mafia, not the ag mathletes, but the Canadians, they are they are super at switching very quickly between hectares and acres, or if they need to talk about something in liters versus what we do,
Right.
in our
Right.
conversions for how we put product on crop. Yeah, they're really good. We just go along for the ride with them.
Fair enough. So what's your client base look like? Because we've heard so much, I mean, from folks back east about, farmers aging and, the takeover of family farms. What are your clients tend to be larger or smaller? Go ahead, Bridget.
All right. And the reason I raised my hand is I've got some of these stats very fresh in my mind. All right. Average age of a farmer in the United States is 58 years old. It's when a lot of people are looking towards retirement. But there's a heavy amount of farmers that this is simply what they've done. They don't retire until later because they've built this. Also, the hurdle to get into farming is very high economically. And so they have to take their time phasing out to bring their next generation in. As we look at acreage across the United States, you are looking at 15% of farmland changing hands in the next 5 years. In North Dakota, that equates to 3 million acres in total. Then you look at how many people have nothing to do with the farm. 84% of the United States is urban. So we are very much the minority. I mean, here in North Dakota, there's only 785,000 of us.
Right.
We're all related. We get together at Christmas. It's one big to-do. It's a great time. But our farms are large, whereas what you see in the East Coast, you may see someone who says, I'm farming 300 to 400 acres, and it's completely acceptable for me. We have farmers here in North Dakota that, because of the land mass and what they do, they're easily raising between 10 and 30,000 acres.
Oh my goodness.
A farm.
Wow.
And that size generally gets bigger as you move west in North Dakota. I mean, there's some big farms in the east, but it gets bigger mostly because you don't have the yield potential in that part of the state, and it's a moisture thing. I mean, when you're out in Medora, you kind of know
that's the west.
That's the west. It's a lot drier. So, if you've got a 4,000 or 5,000 acre farm in Bridgette's area, that's probably a 12 or a 15,000 acre farm out there. So, my client base, I have 13 farms, and the average just take the acres I have divided by my clients, it's about 4,000 acres. And
wow.
And my largest is about 8, and my smallest is about 1,200. And their kind of neighbors are close. And it's my top 3 crops are spring wheat, canola, and soybeans.
And let me ask you this: spring wheat. How does a consumer see that? Is that I mean, how does that appear on shelves in the United States? Or is it also shipped overseas?
Yeah, so it is generally the highest protein wheat that is on the market. So if you're getting spring wheat or winter wheat out of, say, the state of Kansas, you're probably in that 8 to 10, 11% protein range. Up here, we're kind of in that 14, and this year dry, it's going to be probably 16 and higher in certain cases. So there's an inverse relationship. When your yield is high, generally your protein is low, and then you can flip it. When your yield is low, your protein's high. So there's certain things that spring wheat is used for, just like other wheats there are. Tuesday this week, I was in Fargo, and I was talking to 6 people from Japan at the Northern Crops Institute. They were bakers and millers, and they're over here for 4 or 5 days. And so I was talking about quality of wheat. I couldn't pass it up. I mean, how often you get to talk to
That's
somebody.
What they came for.
So they asked me, and I'm like, I'll do that. That sounds kind of interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, my kids eat a high protein waffle mix, so it probably comes from North Dakota.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yep.
So are you working with generational farmers? How long have these folks been in the business? What's their educational background like? I know many folks these days have agribusiness degrees, but I'm sure just as many have learned in the fields.
I would say with my farmer clients, I have one, this is his last year of farming. So he's 64. He's decided to retire. I've had two other farmers who have retired, both in that same age. And I think one thing that really transpired, this is just an observation, that once COVID hit, it changed. Bridgette said like people 58 is the average age and they kind of have a tendency to go longer.
Right.
I think after that, spouses, if they worked at a place and then COVID, they were at home, they just talk more. And it's like, do I want to work till I'm 72?
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if I do. I mean, do you see that, Bridgette?
Yeah, I see that changeover where folks started to say, I think I need to do this when I'm younger and I'm in better health. And
Yeah.
I want to spend time with my spouse, my kids. Farming is a lot of work, especially if you add livestock into the mix. It is a physical, demanding every day. And
365.
no one, absolutely, nobody's looking for sympathy. They bought into this. It is a lifestyle that you want, but I see more farmers treating it as this is my job. It doesn't have to be the only thing that defines me.
Right. Right.
And that's a little generational because before, if you went
Yeah.
back to, so I grew up on a farm. My brother just retired. He is 56. And it was just like,
Yeah.
he just got to a point where he was more stressed out about it. And so him and his wife, they don't have kids. And my middle son wants to farm, but my dad's still there,
Wow.
and he's 83, and he's down there, and that's just kind of that generation. That's all they wanted to do.
Hmm.
And my brother's just like, no, I want to do some other things with my wife, and my son, he sees that, and he took off this year, him and his wife, and they went on like a 4-day vacation. My brother would never do that. Go,
Wow.
Right.
something might happen, we got to do, or this could happen, or whatever, and then nothing happens. And you spend
Right.
4 days just sitting there waiting.
Boring about it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and Mark asked about education. I would say 50% of the farmers that I see on a regular basis have 4-year business degrees, whether it's in agribusiness or in business. There has been a real trend as of the last couple of years to see more farmers going to 2-year schools. They're picking up their diesel mechanic or their farm and agribusiness 2-year associate's degrees before they're coming back to the farm and just bringing some different skill sets than maybe what they had before.
I mean, is that, would you say, kind of the turn towards trade schools in the United States in general? People feeling that I don't need that 4-year bachelor's, the associate's going to do me well for what I'm,
Yeah.
my lifestyle.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I'm also very thankful that they are, because one of these days my plumber and my electrician are going to retire and I need new guys.
Right. Yeah. Plumbers are like rock stars these days. They're very, very hard to get a hold of, and when they show up, you might as well just throw your wallet at them.
Same for a dentist.
Yeah.
So Jason, I was going to ask about young people getting into the farming business, and you mentioned your son. What sort of advice did you give him? What sort of lessons has he learned from your brother and from his grandfather?
So he worked for me. And so what he did for 3 years was he was a crop scout. So I have, we're on 4-wheelers and looking at crops a whole month. We start in April, May, June, into July here now, and we'll still use him getting around. And he was very good at it. But he's always wanted to farm. He worked for a neighbor over here for probably 6 years, and that didn't work out. The biggest entry to barrier is that it's like, so I mentioned these farms are like my 4,000 acres. That's millions and millions of dollars to, if you were to just say, you know what, Mark, I'm gonna quit today, and here's what it's gonna take to take over this farm. You can't do it.
Yeah.
So then it gets very tricky in how you have to come to some agreements, because my dad doesn't have any grain in the bin anymore, but my brother does. And so he's
Mhm.
got that. And then he's got machinery. And so they got to work out a deal to transition that, and a payment plan and cash
I
rent.
see.
And
Right.
it gets complicated. So you have to, the biggest thing I think that has to be done is that you have to be very open in communication, which is when you're in this part of the world, that I'll go back to my Scandinavian heritage. That is not something that just comes easy for
Yeah,
people.
much more stoic.
Yes. Yep.
And I think we want to make sure that listeners understand that there is a scale of economy, right? There, you need to be of a certain size and a certain amount of diversity, whether it's with your crop diversity or your livestock, to be profitable. Everybody chooses to be profitable. We all love the image of going to grandma and grandpa's house and remembering how they had 10 cows and 15 chickens and a couple of hogs and a great big garden, and they made it work. But life has changed. I also don't go to a car dealership anymore that only sells me a Model T in black. We've advanced.
Yeah.
And so, that's I love the nostalgia that goes with it, but the reality is it has changed. I grew up on an operation that had dairy cattle, beef cattle, and grain farming. The dairy left in the drought of 1988. We still have my brothers still run beef cattle at a much sizable operation, and they grain farm. Meanwhile, my sister and her husband, they have cattle and sheep. So your diversity is always going to be different. And land values have appreciated. It's not so easy to buy a chunk of ground anymore at $100 an acre. It's much more add a zero or two to that to get you started.
Right. And so, Jason, you said you've got a couple of your clients that are retiring. What are they planning on doing with their acreage?
So the first guy that I took on that I had for a long time, he retired here like 3 years ago. And he's been very good about, he did not go find the largest dollar amount that he could get. He went and found 3 entities with young people.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So one of the conversations that I'll stop at a shop of my guys, and I know which shops to stop at because they got beer in the fridge,
All right.
and even farmers who are in their 40s, we will get in this conversation. Who's going to be here in 10 years? As far as neighbors, and then there's the
Right.
size of stuff, because it has changed quite a bit. And I think people will say, oh, agriculture is this just huge industrial type of a machine. And it's based on the cost of a combine and a tractor, the size of farms, how many cattle are in the size of your herd, And it's like, no, that's what Bridgette said. It's economies of scale. And it's a people thing. Most of the labor that we have out on the farm in my area are from South Africa or Brazil.
Wow.
Yes.
Is help. Yeah.
Yep. They are all under H-2A documentation to be here. They come with specialized skills, whether it's in mechanics or they've run equipment before or animal husbandry so they can help with livestock. All of those things matter tremendously. Your question about, farmers transitions, 21% of US farms do not have an heir. They don't have someone who's going to come back. That's 1 in 5 farms right now.
Yeah.
Now, for the farms that do have heirs coming back, I think Jason can attest to this. I've seen a real uptick in daughters and nieces coming back to the farm, or granddaughters, and
Wow.
taking over the operations.
Wow.
One of the things too is in that transition. I mean, this winter season, I don't know, Bridgette and I'll probably see at least 10 meetings of transition of farms talking about that. And if you see stuff on social media and resonated with me, equal is not the same as equitable. And that is something that, if you have kids and there's 4 kids and one is around on the farm and helps and does everything, and the other 3 go off somewhere and do this, you got to decide how the farm is going to continue. Because I can tell you, is when the parents get close to not being around here, everybody shows up and thinks they're going to get their fair share about stuff.
Right.
And it's you have to have that open communication on everything, because you can easily have hard feelings immediately.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Farms can be completely lost in those situations where, because no one could come to an agreement, the land is just sold, and then that legacy is gone.
Right. And I think we've seen that over and over again. You have 3 children and each gets a third, and one wants to keep the house and the other 2 want to sell. And I'm sure that's
Yes.
playing out on family farms as well.
It doesn't even have to be a farm. It can be any business in the United
Exactly.
States.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of, it can be the same thing. So, I mean, I think farms have that nostalgia feel to it, but it's a
Right.
business,
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it needs to
And
be a business.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's where you all come in. And do you find that a lot of spouses tend to work in town, the traditional jobs, either working for the government or, in the schools that provide health insurance, that provide that steady income? There's always the boom and bust in commodity prices. How does that play out, day to day, month to month for farmers' lives?
The hottest commodity in any community is a brand new single female teacher. Because she has the one thing, if you're farming, one of your bigger expenses is going out and finding health insurance on the open market.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a $24,000 to $28,000 bill. Just boom. So if you have the personality where you can find someone who has a job, you get married, and there's a lot of women that work in situations that it's primarily for health insurance. I mean, they get paid,
Yes.
they do, but I mean,
And you can see that trend be cyclical depending on farm economy. If our farm economy is really strong, we may have less off-farm spouses. But then on the flip side of that, when our economy takes a downturn, you see that change. Just as Jason said, we've got to have someone who's bringing in extra for living expenses, health insurance. And I don't think that's different from any other small business across the US.
yeah, we went through a big stretch where it was the cattle people are finally getting their due. I mean, you can go into a supermarket and you can see what the price of anything off a cut of beef is, and you're going, "Holy buckets.
Mhm.
Wow." And that is a supply and demand thing. We have a small herd currently in the United States, and they went through it wasn't just that cyclical pattern lasted a long time. So I personally, I don't have any problem doing that because if I got to go to the store, it's like, oh, well, whatever. I remember buying it when it was like dirt cheap too.
Yeah. A corn farmer, a corn farmer and a rancher are both drinking whiskey, but for very different reasons. The corn guy is currently very narrow on his profit. The beef guy is like, okay, finally I can afford to buy whiskey.
Wow. And I mean, do a lot of we talked a little bit earlier, growers diversifying and, are they hedging by having multiple crops that will allow them to weather the storm? No pun intended.
I would say that for the back in the day, if you would go back to the 50s and 60s, leading up to the 80s, Bridgette mentioned the buyout in the 80s there. Almost every farm had livestock on it. And that was a very self-sufficient thing. You had chickens, pig, you had a milk cow, you had probably whatever. It was once grain farming got to be more profitable, it was easy to get out of animal
Mhm.
agriculture. In my area up here in Northeast North Dakota, very little animal agriculture at all.
Right.
There isn't.
And your kids left the farm. You lost the labor. They went off to get jobs and weren't coming back. And if you have to be a one man or a one couple show handling multi head of livestock, that's wearing on you. And that's why we saw some reductions as well.
Yeah. So how's the farm economy in August 2026? Are there we talked about livestock, which is at almost an all-time high. Are in general are things good, not so good? I know we've got tariffs, all sorts of things happening.
Go ahead, Bridget.
Farmers are the most optimistic people you ever wanted to meet. The economy is not awesome, particularly when you look at the grain side of the business where you're
Yeah.
focusing on corn, soybeans, and wheat, but someone will plant the crop next year. They always do. We always get it planted. Everybody's looking for diversification, side hustles. I mean, I've got guys who have 3D printers on the farm. They're printing parts for other people. They have a trucking business on the side. Whatever they're doing to make sure that they stay in a good spot as far as profitability is concerned. When you look at livestock producers, like we talked about, beef is having their day in the sun. I'm sorry that it costs this much for ground beef, but maybe they're finally getting their due in what it should be.
Fair enough.
Sheep producers are actually doing kind of well right now because lamb we're in a country right now who's really focused on protein. Lamb has 3 times as much protein per ounce as beef does. So folks are really adding that to their diet. And because of the tariffs with other countries, synthetic fiber for clothing has gotten more expensive. But we raise wool. And so the wool price right now is about triple to quadruple what it had been 2 years ago, as wool is being used in clothing more frequently.
And so, I mean, it's almost like hitting the jackpot for a year. I mean, I'd imagine farmers and ranchers are waiting a decade, 20 years to just hit it right.
Yeah.
It probably the biggest thing on any, and this is anybody listening as a consumer, you're running a business, it is the cost of doing business has been the biggest impact for the most part. So things that really impacted was any tariffs, right? So that's going to impact price of steel. So now that impacts Case IH and John Deere equipment. It impacts parts, all that
Grain.
type of stuff. Yep.
Grain storage.
Well, and grain isn't then they counterbalance with the tariff. So now soybeans aren't getting shipped to China. They're coming out of Brazil. So the basis, right? So that they can drop the basis, which basically when you do that at a market, the market's saying, you know what? We don't want your crop. Just hold on to it. And people are like, what? Yeah, that's the way it is. So supply and demand globally has become very political. And this whole thing that's happened over in Iran with the Strait of Hormuz and the shipping, and that was most of our fertilizer, right? If
Wow.
As an example, when you go into a Walmart, where does most of that stuff come from that's in Walmart? Overseas, right? And our country has decided that's the best economic policy that we're going to have. If stuff gets made somewhere else, they ship it in here. Well, it's the same with fertilizer. They probably don't have the same OSHA or EPA regulations in other countries as we do. So it costs more to produce it here. So that's what's my guys are really worried about, is just the costs of
Yes.
of everything right now, because the grain market has agriculture operates. If you're a farmer or a rancher, you operate in the economy that's just pure competition, which means you are a price taker. So when I haul my load of grain into the elevator, I look up on the board and it says $4.02. That's what I get. I can't negotiate that because Bridgette's corn is the same as my corn and Mark's corn is the same as Bridgette's. It's all the same, essentially. And so you're a price taker. So you can't like, oh, well, I raise better corn than Mark does. I should be getting, that type of
You
thing.
definitely do, but
And another impact that you wouldn't think about that is we are very efficient at overproducing commodities. We don't produce food. We produce generally commodities that go into make other things. They make bread and they make ethanol and they make feedstock for animals and all kinds of other things. The impact of the GLP-1 on food demand has been it's a major thing.
Uh-huh.
It is.
wow.
Yep.
Wow. So weight loss medications.
Yeah.
Because you have folks that once they start their medications, they are eating less.
They're eating less.
They are taking the focus off of more processed foods,
Mm-hmm.
and they are putting it into proteins and different dietary areas. So the beef and dairy sectors are really taking advantage of that because they fit that groove.
Yep.
A byproduct of making cheese is whey, which is high in protein, and it's an excellent item that you can be adding to other foods to increase their protein content. We're actually short of whey right now, and we're at a cheese surplus because we need to eat more cheese because we're using so much whey.
All right. And that the whey protein comes from that. That's the source of whey protein. I
Mhm.
guess vegetarian. I guess it would not be a vegan option. Is whey protein considered vegan?
No,
No,
because it would come from dairy.
it comes from dairy. Wow.
Mhm. Yep, and there's other proteins, we've got our partner Kyle, he's got a lot of field peas in his neighborhood.
Yeah.
Field pea powder, high in protein, lentils as well. So we're contributing, but everybody's eating differently.
And
Yeah.
you have a lot of issues with there's more awareness,
Mhm.
allergies, gluten tolerances,
Right.
say carbs, right? Well, bread's a carb, and
Sure
and
is.
this whole wheat thing, right? And we can raise wheat almost anywhere on the planet. And so
Really?
it's yeah, United States raises a lot of wheat, Canada, Europe, particularly Russia and Ukraine, huge markets over there.
Yes.
Probably biggest exporter on the planet is over there. And you got all this conflict that's going on and ports getting shut down and ships getting shot, and it doesn't matter because there's that
So
wheat everywhere.
Wow.
when we talked about the diets and how people are changing, look, just looking at this group, we're all in a very similar age range. All right. I'm calling this out right now. For all of you who are so upset about your oh, we can't eat processed food. I've seen you eat Pringles. I remember the big jug or the big can of High C. We all ate it. That's what we did. You in college, I saw you with your red Solo cup dipping in a garbage can full of booze. Don't tell me how we're all clean eating now because we're not all doing it.
Right. And how about organic farmers? Are most of your clients conventional farmers or
Yep, they are. I don't have any of my farmers that are they're not considered organic. I know a few people who are organic in different spots in, western Minnesota and parts of North Dakota, and that's their choice. I think
yeah,
Mhm.
I really don't have a problem with how people decide what they wanna do. If that's your business model, if that's how you wanna farm, that's great. I do have a problem, so when someone says, "What you're doing is absolutely wrong, and what I'm doing is absolutely right." And you have to do that to separate out yourself because when you're doing something that's specialized, now you gotta market yourself.
sure.
Now now you can set your price. So that's the you can it's a trade-off. Do you wanna be a price
Mhm.
taker? Well, that's kind of the easiest route to go. If you wanna be a
Yeah.
price maker, think of farmers markets and all that type of stuff. It's you gotta hustle. You gotta do more work. So
Mhm. And with organic, you need a market. There's not always a place in every small town for you to deliver goods. So you've got to be able to focus on where your markets are so you can get to them. But also, as the consumers, educate yourself because when someone says it's organic, you need to know what that means. There are labeling laws that differ state by state for what the allowances are. So you should understand what that means. Also, I'm not afraid of conventionally produced commodities or any food. I'm a mom. I have trusted the science. I fed all sorts of things to my kids, and I understand what's good and what's bad. And I think we have to stop being so afraid and worrying about your sister's cousin's uncle's wife who's giving advice on Facebook because, for the love of God, she might be wrong.
Probably
So,
is.
probably, be smarter about those things. And when you say, I don't know where to get information, so here's your chance to reach out to the Ag Mafia because we have a ton of farmers who would be happy to explain their operations to you. So you can understand that it's not what we do to the wheat. It's not the wheat that we raise that you think affects your gut health. It's how it's milled and processed because we eat
Right.
with our eyes as a country and we got to love Wonder Bread where we milled out all the good stuff.
Right, right. The white Wonder Bread with not a speck of flavor or anything in it. Can you talk a little bit about that so people understand, the process of the actual wheat on the stalk from to it arrives in your bread, whether that be Dave's 20 grain bread or Wonder Bread?
Honestly, the easiest way for us to do that, Jason's going to be able to give you a great little overview of it. But there's a podcast that was done on the Agronomist Happy Hour podcast. And between the three of us, Jason and Kyle and I, we've hosted that. And it was a discussion with a gentleman who ran a mill where he would get those specs from the other millers, from the bakers, as to what customer demand wanted. And it's about an hour podcast. But if you really want to understand why our breads and our carbs are the way they are, that is probably the clearest picture I've ever been given about it.
It's a good one. I listened to it this morning.
Yep, with Godfrey Freed. It was
Yes,
really
thank you
good.
for suggesting it. Yeah, he really, yes, if you want in-depth on your cereal, that's the podcast, and he's the guy for sure.
What I do is I help my farmer. I probably have 5 different varieties of spring wheat that are the majority of the acres. And all we care about, me and my farmer client, are the most bushels, the highest protein, and then it doesn't lodge and we don't get disease in it. So I'm helping manage some of that stuff. They market it, and then from there it takes off. I've been out to Portland where they've loaded Panamax ships and sent off to Malaysia or Korea or Taiwan, and they're trying to meet specs off a 100 unit train that shows up, and they got to make these specs.
Right.
But he talked about their, like, how we have stuff set up in this country where we mass produce a lot of stuff, and people will say, I can't eat bread in the United States, but I took a trip to Italy and it was no problem. I could eat all the bread I want. I don't understand. So then that transitions into what's going on. What's the difference? Probably, if you were to use one word that signifies all that, that word is glyphosate. Okay? That is a word. Now,
that's the consumer fear.
Yeah, that's what the
Yes,
consumer
okay.
will type thing. But here's another thing. If your mom made what you considered to be the best bread or buns or whatever it was, and you have the recipe right in front of you, what are the chances that you make the same exact tasting bun or bread that she did? I don't think you can.
Yeah.
It's always different.
What does your mom know that you don't know? It's right there on the card. All I got to do is put this, and there's a certain way. So people that bake, there's a different way. Well, that's a slower process.
Yeah.
But we're a nation on the move. Gotta get here. Gotta run into the convenience store. Get that. Convenience stores sell more food than grocery stores in this country,
which is sad to hear,
but true. And glyphosate has nothing to do with gluten, with celiac disease, none of it. Again, as someone who has worked in this industry, both of us, for many years and decades, glyphosate is not the enemy that people make it out to be.
And it's been a lot in the news. Maybe you could just explain a little bit for folks that may be unfamiliar what glyphosate is and why it's been controversial. And I know it was part of the MAHA movement to ban it, and that didn't come to fruition.
Yeah. So it came out in probably the 70s. And at that time, the company was Monsanto, right? And if you were in the western part of the United States, you've used glyphosate for a long time because it's a staple of you're not working the ground out there with a piece of tillage equipment. You are using your sprayer, and you are what we call burning down the fields to get the weeds out. And it wasn't until the mid 90s that was the introduction of GMOs. First you had soybeans, and then corn and canola came in. And that was kind of the start of it. So there was this, I would just say, maybe anti-science movement. People are really worried about that type of stuff.
Right, the GMO piece, yeah.
GMO piece. So that's the tie to that.
I see. Okay, and that was kind of the start of that movement.
Yep. And so almost all of those GMOs, those genetics, corn, soybean, canola, sugar beets, they were Roundup Ready. That was the brand name for that. Right. And so you could spray Monsanto's brand of glyphosate, Roundup, on those crops and they wouldn't die. And so I think that's where kind of it started. And
Yeah.
it's probably in the last 8 to 10 years really like caught fire, particularly on social media. And
Mhm.
things just, and you know how it goes where people put stuff out. There's truths, there's half truths, there's just blatant bad science and lies and things like that. So we're not out here. Whenever I see someone say, "Oh, they drench their crop with this," right? Okay, right there, you can just tell that somebody has used that word from somebody else, and they actually don't know what you're doing. Okay, when you're out spraying. I mean, this is from a cost standpoint, from an agronomy standpoint. There are things that we will do that are labeled, and then there's things that we just can't do. So you gotta.
So if I can put this in perspective, there's a couple terms we've used that should be defined. First of all, when it comes to glyphosate, there's a cost involved, as Jason said. No farmer puts anything on his field for free unless it's rainfall. And so to put in perspective what they're doing, I want you to go find that can of Diet Coke you're drinking, that fridge cigarette of 12 ounces. Okay. That's 3/4 of a pint. There are a lot of herbicides that are sprayed at that rate. So take your can of Diet Coke, your 12 ounces. I want you to dump that in a 5-gallon bucket of water. And now I want you to evenly distribute that across an entire football field. That's 1 acre. That is what you are looking at. Actually, I'm sorry, I did that wrong. It should be 2 5-gallon buckets because it should be 10 gallons per acre. So you're going to put 12 ounces in 10 gallons of water across an entire football field. That's the level of concentration we are talking about. There are only 7 GMO crops in the entire world. None of them are tomatoes. None of the ones that people want to think about. We are looking at corn, soybeans, sugar beets, canola, cotton. Okay? Think about those 5. One of them is papaya. And that was developed because that market in Hawaii was being destroyed by a naturally occurring fungus that was devastating their market. And so they found a way to use a GMO, which stands for genetically modified organism. Those genetically modified organisms naturally occur in nature. And so with the papaya, they found a fungus that could prevent the devastation of the other fungus on the papaya. In the case of GMO crops like corn, soybeans, canola, there is a plant in nature that just has natural resistance. It's kind of like the fact that I'm not bothered by dog hair, but Jason is, he's allergic to it. And so both of us as plants would replicate seed. The seed that I produce, because I am naturally tolerant to the glyphosate, scientists found that seed and they were able to isolate the genetics of it. And then what they did is they went ahead and they figured out how to take that DNA, they loaded it on a shotgun shell, and they shot a soybean plant to inject it into the soybean back in the 90s because they didn't have another way to do it. We shot a soybean in order to put naturally occurring genetics from nature into a soybean and then continue to grow the soybean to produce more seed, and we now have a commercial production. That's the shorthand version of it.
Very high tech, the shoot a soybean.
Yeah, right.
They
kept the gun.
It's interesting. It's science, like you used to have, remember having dial-up modem?
Yeah.
And remember that?
Ding, ding, ding. Yeah, got it.
And now if you can't get 5G on your phone and you can't send something in a split second, you're just like, I'm mad. I'm like, what the heck's going on? So everything has advanced to some degree. And I understand the sensitivity to some of this because most people look at it as food, right? You're not going out and buying number 2 yellow corn to eat. You're not going to the store and you're not buying a bushel of soybeans to eat. Those are ground up, and the amount of those products that are in, like, say, how much corn do you think is actually in that thing of Doritos? It's not as much.
Not enough.
Not enough.
Very small.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's, I don't, it's a debate, right? And there has been, if you go back in the history of this country, all the way back when it started, the vast majority of the people that were here in the 13 colonies, it was all agriculture, almost all agriculture. And now it has shrunk down to, what is it, 2 or 3% of the total population. Yeah, 2%
2% are farmers.
is actually in there. So it doesn't take long if your kids moved off in the 70s, agriculture's changed a tremendous amount from that time, from the 80s. I mean, we went to college, Bridgette and I, in the late 80s and early 90s, and nobody really did that back then because it was such a tough time. Interest rates were high and people were going out of business. And it's like, oh, I don't know, let's go to college for agriculture. That seems like a good idea. That's all we knew.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
No one was more shocked than us when we got jobs.
and still gainfully employed all these years later.
It's just that topic right there of when I graduated in 1992 out of NDSU in Fargo, North Dakota, I had the wall of rejection, and I had 57 rejection letters. That I had interviewed, I'd sent off stuff, and every day I'm putting on my tie and I'm like, today's the day I know I'm going to do it today. I'm going to get this job. And that's with a 4-year degree and experience and everything else. And now it's like, you can get that job. You don't need it. You can have a 2-year degree.
Yeah.
And it's all you got to do is just show up, be curious, and do what you're supposed to do. And it's changed, and you're getting paid a totally different amount than what you were back then.
So any advice for young people interested in agronomy, getting into the field?
That's Bridgette's area right there.
Sure.
Oh, Mark, you hit on one of our favorite topics. Okay, between Jason and I would venture a guess we've had well over 100 different trainees, interns, new hires that we've helped bring on board in a variety of capacities. Okay, so we've had a lot of kids we've gotten a chance to influence, good and bad. Nonetheless, there's some easy rules. Do what you say you're going to do. If you have made a commitment to an employer, to a professor, to your parents, follow through with that. Show that you have the commitment to getting it done. When you are being hired, especially if you're looking at corporations, they don't necessarily care what your degree is. Yeah, it's great. And you met the GPA requirement. But you know what you did is you proved that you can finish a project, that you understand the concept of teamwork and communication. And then, above all, be involved. As someone who's done recruiting corporately, if I see your resume and all you did was go to class, occasionally you had a job, that shows me you don't have a value of time management. And as any employer, I need you to be able to do that, to manage your time well. That's why I'm paying you. Resumes that have your hobbies on them, I'm not paying you to shoot a black bear. So move along with that. And when your objective says, I'd like to get a job in agriculture, no shit, we all do.
I've always counseled people to ditch the objective and go for a summary, which is you showing the employer what you bring them, not telling the employer what you want, which is you want to get paid and a job.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, say yes, take the challenges.
You have to be curious. You have to want to do what you want to do. Definitely a couple things. You have to do internships. You have to. When I would interview people who I was going to hire, it was like night and day. People that didn't do internships, just went to class, were involved in stuff like that. It wasn't the same as people who I will get out of my comfort zone and I'll go move to Nebraska and take this job. And they learn so much, right? Your classes get you so far, but it's like all the things you learn on the job is a big thing. And then understand that when you're in wherever you're going to college, build your network of people. That's because at some point, keep a journal, write names down, where they're from, all this stuff, because at some point you can come back to that. And I think actually my network now is more valuable than my education.
Wow. Completely. I totally agree.
Yeah. And if you can, if your school has it or your county has it, definitely look at FFA and 4-H as two
And
means.
what are them? What's FFA and 4-H?
So 4-H is going to be if your state has an active county extension, county agent, it's young people getting involved in lots of projects, I should say, different things. And FFA, it used to be called the Future Farmers of America,
Right.
and now it's just FFA, but it is big into STEM, right?
Mhm.
So it's science, technology, engineering, mathematics, all that type of stuff.
4-H is outside of school, and you usually see 4-H at a younger level, whereas FFA, you have students taking ag classes from 7th to 12th grades. And
Gotcha.
so you're just seeing a slightly older group. You can do both.
Yep.
And it's okay.
All right.
Yep.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Good to know.
And I believe the biggest state that has FFA in the nation is California, numbers
Wow.
wise. Yeah.
Doesn't
Which-
surprise me in some ways. Central Valley and, the
Mhm.
non-touristy areas that most people aren't familiar with, but makes sense.
But if it's STEM related, right? There's all this other stuff. So I mean, the largest ag economy in the United States is California.
Wow.
It is.
Should
North
surprise
Dakota,
you,
we're gonna get there, baby. We're gonna get there.
not pinto beans. You guys got the pinto beans and the wheat and soybeans.
Yeah, we do.
Yep.
Anything we didn't cover? Want to make sure we got everything. And I know this episode will release next week in mid-August, which is getting into early, as you mentioned, harvest season. What's coming up over the next few weeks?
That's pretty much what I got going on. We will make a trip out to eastern Montana. There's about 5 or 6 of us that will go to, we call it soil sampling nerd camp, and we go help Kyle. Kyle has some big acres out there, big farms, and it would take him by himself over 2 weeks to do it. And 4 or 5 of us show up, and we can do it in 3 days, 3-4 days. And we goof off and drink beer. And
it sounds like a lot of fun in the evenings.
It is. Yeah. It's very social. Yeah.
I am going to be, again, daily radio. Jason and I are also going to be recording several podcasts for the Agronomist Happy Hour, which is ours.
Excellent.
And just, Jason's Rock and Roll Agronomy. I have my own business, Lilac Lane Media. There's a lot going on over there. I'll be doing a sales and negotiation training for a fertilizer equipment company in Wichita this month. Farm show circuit is starting, so there's a number of those that'll be happening at the beginning of September, like Farm Progress, Big Iron. And so I have duties at those from time to time. And frankly, Mark, did you expect we were going to get to any of these topics today?
I think we covered a lot, and it sounds like you guys are busy and keeping yourselves out of trouble. So very good to hear.
Yeah, we're so glad you called us up to have us on here. I've listened to a few episodes now.
Great.
Of your podcast, and I just like the layout of it. Different
Excellent.
people and things that that's the best thing is like you get so kind of in your own area, you're part of the world, and you got to go see and hear from everybody else, right? And if people have the time to do it, travel your own state first. There's so many good things to see your own state.
That's right.
And then get into other parts and get in the back roads and check it out because it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's great having y'all on the show, and it's been a nice learning experience for me, and I hope for a lot of our listeners as well. Bridgette, Jason, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right. All Across America is produced by me, Marco Vig, in Ridgefield, Connecticut. Visit us on Instagram at All Across America. Check out our website, allacrossamerica.com. There's an interactive map with all our episodes, and there's a Contact Us page where you can send your reactions, guest ideas, and suggestions. So get in touch, stay connected. To me, that's what podcasting is all about. Thanks for listening.